We're back with bottles.
Oh, yeah. This is C.
This is D.
This is Black Meets World. Hey, we got a full house. Yeah, we can kick it off.
Guys, we're drinking again.
Oh, yeah, it's no more. Yeah, we are.
It's not a dry studio anymore. And I'm sure, look at Codey's cheesing hard. He's mad because last time he was here, we didn't have any
it was
bottles.
dry when you were here last
So
time.
many promises.
I know.
We kept them though, didn't we?
That's true.
Speaking of, we got a returning guest. Hey, Codey.
Hello.
How you
How's
doing?
it going?
Good.
Long time no see.
I know. Since the Women's March.
Right. Which we'll get to
Shortly. We got another returning guest.
Hey, King William.
Hey, how's it going?
It's good. How you doing?
All right, I'm all right. I've been loving what you guys have been doing with the podcast the last few weeks, so it's good to be back.
Hey,
Aw,
we appreciate that.
that.
Okay. You want to speak or
20, I don't know.
Okay. All right.
Around each
Whatever
other too
you,
much.
whatever
Every day
you
this
want to
week.
do. This
And
is actually
another-
bizarre. We have seen each other every day this week.
It's facts. It's been a little bit much. No, I'm just joking. I love you, D.
Okay.
Anyway, we have Kiara in the room as well.
What up?
What up?
Thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Thank you. This is the first episode of our Black History Month kickoff.
It is.
Hey.
Beyonce's pregnant with twins.
Whew.
Donald Trump's running amok.
Oh no.
You had to hit me with something positive
I mean, you
after
started off
Beyonce.
strong.
Oh, I started. Well, I went positive first. I could have reversed
It
it.
went downhill real quick.
I basically hit you with both sides of the spectrum. What do y'all want to talk about first? You want to talk about the Women's March?
Yeah. So this nigga Trump got elected into office.
Starting early.
He had an inauguration.
Starting so early.
And because nobody loves him or fucks with him, women said, you know what? I'm going to have a march. Specifically, who created Women's March on Washington?
I don't remember.
I remember. Okay.
There were two white women who.
1983.
That's what I was going to say. It was
Yeah.
white women,
83?
right?
Yeah.
No.
The
Not
original.
the suffrage movement.
Oh, I didn't know if you were talking about the original or this one.
No. This one.
You're talking about who resurrected it, right? Because there have been previous women's marches on
Well,
Washington.
Thank you for
That's what I'm saying.
colloquial-
Yeah.
Talking about-
Resurrected. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Who resurrected it? White women, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
After they voted for Trump. So essentially, there were like 5 million people, I think, that marched around the world.
Yeah.
C and Codey and I actually road trip together down to DC.
That's true.
Had a good ass time.
Great time.
And we went to the march. C and I went. Codey
was
was
lost
fake.
in the crowd.
It was so many people, yo.
It was really intense. So Kiara and King William, did you guys go to the marches?
I didn't. Everybody I know did.
Okay.
And so I felt like I was vicariously living through all of the movement and energy. And I did sponsor. So there was ways that you could go and donate to sponsor folks to get down there. So I'm a little afraid of crowds.
Listen,
And it wasn't the place to be if you're afraid.
And
of
it wasn't. And I had my girlfriend had 9 people staying in her house in DC.
Damn.
And then she left to travel to Europe the next day with all these people in her house, including her dad and her brother and all my homegirls.
Wow.
My mom was in front of Trump Tower. My brother was out there. You know, it was magical.
Word.
Nice.
Yeah, the story is incredible.
King William, what about you?
I did not go. It was a last minute decision not to go, and it worked out really well because I needed to. I had a family issue that happened like right around the same time, but otherwise I would have went.
Okay, understood. Family first. So the march in Washington was dope. We ended up around a lot of diverse people, namely like this family. Where are they from?
namely the whites.
Let me just remind y'all real quick that 94% of black women voted for Hillary and 56% of white women voted for Donald Trump. So
I appreciate these stats. Oh,
listen,
shit.
because the same people that were out there marching are the same people who got confused on election day and were like, oh, wait, Hillary's a liar.
Nah.
Benghazi emails.
People made decisions in that voting booth.
Yeah.
And they made decisions and spoke out loud about one thing. And when they got closed that little curtain and pressed some buttons, it was a whole different damn thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Some random white man on the train, day after the man got elected, turned around to me and goes, so who did you vote for? And I was like, all right, suspicious 55-year-old white man with a beard on the train right now. Why are you talking to me? Why do I look amenable to be talking to you? He goes, you know, my daughter, she was like really excited to vote for Hillary for the first time. And, you know, I was excited for her. And then when I got there, I just couldn't do it. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to get off at the stop now. Got off that train and got right back on the next train. And I was like, nigga, I cannot sit next to you. I'm sorry.
I wonder what his why would have been.
Well, so, I mean, he just said he could not come to terms with voting for Hillary.
Does that mean voting for a woman, or does that mean the Clinton? Because there's so many people
so
who hate
many
the
nuances,
Clintons.
yeah.
So many people. My grandmother is white, and she voted for Trump, but not willingly. She voted for Trump because she wasn't going to vote for Hillary because she hates the Clintons, and she felt like voting for the Green Party was a waste of her vote. So,
Damn, that's
yeah.
real.
yeah.
And, it happened,
Yeah.
the women's march kind of came as the resurrection of this movement, right? And the March on Washington came from a Facebook page originally.
Yes.
So there was a woman named Teresa Shook in Hawaii, and she was the person who started this Facebook group right after. And I think that movement, and then it correlated of like everyone being like, okay, so what do we rally around now that we're a separated country, right?
Mm-hmm. It was dope. I think the main takeaway that I had was just that, well, there were a couple things. One was one of the speeches, the black woman was up there and she was like, welcome white women to the life of black women for centuries. Mm-hmm. And I just felt that because people are like, oh, so enraged. And I'm like, bro, this has been us. Like, where y'all at? And so now, as annoyed as I am at certain demographics for being responsible for this, I also think that this kind of thing had to happen for us all to be united around multiple causes. And that was the cool thing about the march. This is the first march I ever went to. It was the most diverse one, but there were also a very large number of causes being marched for. And I think that made it a lot more positive in nature, because if it was a Black Lives Matter march or just an abortion, I don't know, anything specific, people can easily attack more. But because we were marching for different things, it made it a lot more inclusive, which I liked.
Inclusive, or does that mean productive? From being there, right?
You're asking,
fucking
was the
good
march
question.
productive as a whole, as this mass organization of women and men?
To the point of all the differentiate, like all the
physically,
nuances.
I feel like
Right.
physically being there, it was inclusive. That's all I mean. Because I was afraid of being targeted as a black woman, or walking around not really feeling it with these white women, but like it was an inclusive environment.
I don't know if I think that it was inclusive
Yeah.
as much as there were spaces for inclusion that people made.
I agree.
I don't think that I was on the receiving end, or the black women who I was with weren't on the receiving end of explicit attacks or like any kind of explicit vitriol or bigotry. But there was a lot of subtlety to it. There's one experience that definitely stuck with me. There's one experience that stuck with me. So my friends and I were standing in front of this wall, and the wall was filled with a bunch of white protesters, men, women, holding up signs. And there was a group of white women who came up who had printed out a series of women's faces, and they were handing them out because they wanted to take pictures of all the people collected together on the wall. Now, it just so happened when everyone held their poster up, and I think these are everyday women, all of those women happened to be white. And so she came up to, one of the women handing them out came up to a friend of mine, and she said, hey, do you want to take this poster? You want to support the cause? And she said, well, I'll take one of those posters if you have one that has a woman of color's face on it. And her response was, well, you can hold up a poster that's not of a woman of color. And in my mind, that represents a lot of the dichotomy and a lot of the chasm that exists in that space, which is just an internalized lack of imagination and lack of willingness to be able to empathize and understand women of color's experiences. And I think they created space for it, but I think that only happened after they got a lot of initial criticism for the whiteness of how the march as a whole was being structured and led.
I'm on the same page with you, Cody. So that was a sentiment that I felt. So me and Dee, like, were together during the march, and it felt like a big ass music festival. It felt like a love fest. It was all those amazing things, and people had the most creative signs and the most like detailed like vaginas and labias that I've ever seen in my entire life. I was like, people put like effort into like drawing
on those
vagina. It was beautiful. So it was a combination of that, but also there was a moment, like, granted, one thing that I'll say is it was a very black ass rally that started the march, which was beautiful in my eyes. But also, unfortunately, they ran over time. So I think it was supposed to start at 10 a.m. and at like 1 p.m.
Yeah.
And by like 2:30, we're still in the crowd at the rally. So some people got like a little frustrated and started, yelling, "March, march, march," in efforts to kind of like pick up the pace so, people can start walking, right? Get the marching orders, literally. So at one point, the mothers of the movement, which, Trayvon Martin, Philando Castile, who else?
Eric Garner
Davis.
and Jordan Davis.
These mothers were on stage saying, we represent our sons who are in heaven right now. And, they were giving their stories and things like that. And all of a sudden, a big group of white women wearing pink hats start saying, "March, march, march."
Pussy hats.
Pussy hats, yeah. In the middle of these women speaking. So our friend, my cousin who was with us, turned around quickly and said, "You will not disrespect these mothers." But it was like one of those moments where like I was kind of like very attentive to everyone around me because I noticed that they started saying "march, march, march." Then also I was overhearing like a conversation with some other white women, and the one woman said, like, who are the women on stage? And they're like, "Oh, I think like women who've had sons like from domestic violence." And it dawned on me, this is not your reality. Despite the fact that this has been in the news, despite the fact that there has been several marches about Black Lives Matter, this is not your reality, and you're not even making it a priority as to what you're here for. Yes, you're pushing, we want,
most of them were there for Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, which I get. Okay, your vagina, your man's penis, they want to have at least access to like community health care and testing and hopefully like some screenings. Sure, that's great. I'm glad you're finally feeling this. But I think for me, it was like, shit, your ass really, to me, it takes an extra effort to go to a march. If you are the type of individual to go to a march, you at least are probably on the cusp of like, I kind of know what shit's going on in the world. So for you to be a person at this type of rally and you not even understand like,
I don't agree with you.
okay.
We live in New York. We're woke to many things. We're talking about people who are from bumblefuck nowhere who saw
traveled to DC,
who saw one thing and were like, "Oh, we don't like this because it affects us very specifically." And so,
yeah, I think it was a reality check. Is what I'm saying. What I'm saying.
Okay, because I'm just saying, like, just because they showed up doesn't mean that they're going to be able to view it from our perspective or see it as a reality for us.
No.
I wish I knew how many of those people in that crowd didn't vote, and B voted for Trump. Because it's like the reality of the situation is there's been overshadowing of certain policies that I think that will, and dictation through his mannerisms and his lack thereof of education in the system where,
Lord,
where, I mean, I think that his message in some ways got over, like people didn't really know what he was about. Like you knew about him like building the wall and like, yeah, I'm pro-life, but you didn't really know what he was really about. Until like shit started,
until day one,
and shit started really hitting the fan.
Healthcare might be gone, and people were like, "Oh wait, hold up,
slow up." What?
Okay, so there's two things about the Women's March that I was genuinely interested in, which is one, the people who purposely sat out the march, and I don't know if you ladies or any are familiar with that. And then the other thing was too, what's going on with Linda Sarsour, and just how that's kind of turned into something very different at the same time.
Who is that?
She was one of the organizers of the march.
And what happened?
She has just received a lot of bigotry and hatred over social media, and that's prompted a hashtag in response, which is hashtag #IMarchWithLinda.
Oh, that's what that's for?
Yeah, it's for her.
I was like, who the hell is Linda? Okay, that makes sense now.
She was...
the only Linda I know is from that YouTube video with the little boy talking
Listen,
to his
Linda.
Listen, Linda. Anyway, sorry. Okay.
He said the first one was the people who sat out. Yeah, I read an article. Jamila Lemieux wrote an article. I can speak English too. She wrote an article about why she chose to sit out from the march, and she was talking about that this march is another example of white women's lack of inclusion and inclination to think of people of color, specifically black women, as a secondary thought. And she said, I will show up when white women show up for us. And until that happens, I'll be here organizing, doing what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Hello.
Y'all know where to find me.
Right.
Right. And so I wanted to piggyback on that, just because all of the people who were with the march and everything, it was a beautiful thing. I'm not going to ever dismiss that. But this is not a black woman. Linda Sergio, who's getting so many threats now in her life, I kind of don't see that crowd even backing her up when she was a big proponent of getting people in New York to come out for the rallies in D.C. and in New York. And I just kind of thought that was interesting.
She's from Brooklyn, too.
Oh, word?
Yeah.
The more
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
So if you guys, Arab woman in New York, but she's really interesting. And I think this is where we're going to see if this women's march is legit. And no offense to anyone who went out there, but history has shown that if you want to have anything that's successful, at least in the U.S. policy, you got to have women behind it. And if women don't show up past this past week or two, is it going to be successful? Because we know for sure that Black Lives Matter will be out there again, when the next thing happens, unfortunately. But will this march actually generate anything is the thing I'm really concerned about.
Yeah, and a lot of people were tweeting, like, we'll see all you white women at the next Black Lives Matter march, and, like, where are all the All Lives Matter people now, and just sort of, like, calling out that group of people who have been typically not responsive to specific issues.
I do think that there is hope to take from the fact that when Trump put in place the ban for 7 countries with predominantly Muslim people, across the country, across the globe, people were protesting. At JFK, people showed up immediately, squad deep, like representing. So I think that it has inspired a lot of solidarity. I think there's always criticism to be made, but I do think that this moment has catalyzed a lot of people to come together and to recognize just the basic inhumanity of a lot of what Trump's executive orders are getting at.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting fact, though, I did find out that Obama actually, in his first 12 or his first 19 days, actually passed more executive orders than Trump did.
Than like most other presidents, right?
No, he actually passed less.
Okay.
But in his first 12 days, he passed more than Trump had.
Okay.
The difference is the magnitude and scale. Obama was not trying to build a wall to keep no people out of nowhere.
Right. He was passing orders to, like, get people out of jail.
Right.
So...
Right.
I think the solidarity across the board, I mean, even today, Yemen American bodega owners will close to protest Trump's travel ban.
Right.
I think what's important to think about is, and the reality that I think that, even, and we'll get to it later, I know, Trump's Black History Month speech, the inability to understand cultural relativity because you've never lived it.
Right.
To quote it exactly, their story is, talk about African Americans and blacks, their story is one of unmanageable sacrifice, hard work, and good faith in America. I've gotten a real glimpse during the campaign. I'd go around with Ben Carson to a lot of different places I wasn't so familiar with, right? So that cultural relativity and the misunderstanding of the value of these people who have put everything on the table to be in our country and contribute to the day-to-day, and who pay taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And who contribute to your ability to build that crazy fucking wall that you think you're going to build.
Who contributed to your economic status.
Exactly.
Because you own a ton of places that these people work.
And that's the thing. I think it's the power of understanding that we will be able to mobilize, and this is in the most hopeful of strengths in my whole head and my whole space and my whole being, because it's all I can do is be hopeful at this point, is that it can start a revolution.
Right. Because there's nothing else to do. This is the bottom, it feels like.
Yeah.
Trump is like that dude who, it's like, nah, when I walk in a room, not just you's gonna get offended. I'm hitting everybody. You getting punched, you getting gut, you getting something to the gut. I'm actually about to slap you in the face. Everybody gets offended. And they were like comparing, like, this is the first time in a very long time that, like, so many different groups have felt marginalized or, like, disrespected by one person.
Well, I think it's also
it comes in waves. You know what I'm saying?
People don't realize it's
like,
not just one person. Like, Congress is fucking shit up right now with these votes. So, like, today, the House votes to roll back Obama rule on background checks for gun ownership. The fuck are y'all doing?
Oh, wait. Oh, can we get on that for a minute? So that's going to be interesting, right? So the one thing we don't talk about with the Trump administration is now he hasn't had a super NRA stance, but the national. Okay, so let's back up for a minute. So we know that rollback is going to happen, right? So the NRA's now next push for at least this administration is going to be either two things. One is a national standard of gun ownership, or B, a national rollback on every piece of gun legislation that could happen. Both of those are extremely scary, and I'll stick on number one for a minute because if you guys don't know what happened January 1 in Missouri is Missouri became the first state to allow for concealed and open carry without a permit. This was sparked really because of what happened in Ferguson 2.5 years ago, and then also with students in Missouri. So how significant that is, the NRA now wants to use that since Missouri passed that through. The Republican governor of Missouri didn't even allow it. But then, like most things, it gets pushed through a certain point in time. It just eventually became legislation and got pushed through after administrations changed. But what that does on a national standard would be if that were to go through with the NRA, there would be either a complete rollback on everything from silencers to automatic weapons to restrictions on how much you can sell across state lines and sell online for weapons. Or the most damaging thing is every state then would have to adopt a standard of gun ownership, which means places like New York or places like California, which have or Illinois, which have strict gun laws, could be like Missouri now, where anyone can have concealed or unconcealed, without a permit, weapons on them. And that's a huge thing that no one's really talking about yet, but it'll probably get more steam as Trump gets through his first set of orders.
I think you make a good point about implication. I think right now we're still just every day is like, this person did this, and this person did this, and this person did this, but we haven't really had even time to sit back and evaluate all the options or the implications of each of these things and how they'll actually affect us. So I'm glad you brought that up.
I think it also brings up this broader point of how willing this administration across the board is willing to be holden to facts and reality.
Alternative or no?
Nah, the real reality, because the real reality, despite what the NRA line is that the best way to stop a bad person with a gun is not a good person with a gun.
Right.
That doesn't work.
Or against grizzly bears or something,
Yeah, but there are a number of really repressive, retroactive policies like that are popping up in the wake of all of these protests that have been a response to a lot of this negativity. There have been even worse bills that have been introduced. I think there are 5 states right now that are introducing bills that are trying to repress protesting activities.
Yeah.
In North Dakota, it's the worst.
Peaceful protests are going to be, you can get arrested for protesting.
It can be labeled as a felony offense. In North Dakota, they're pushing a bill that will actually decriminalize or make a driver non-liable if they hit a protester and kill them.
Accidentally.
Yeah.
Accidentally. It has to be accidentally.
Right. I mean, oops, I didn't see them standing there in the middle of the street in the middle of a highway.
Oops, I'm friends with the cops.
Right. Oh, damn. I didn't even think about that version.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm just saying, oops, the cops are, I'm friends with the sheriff.
Right.
I'm trying to push through this pipeline, and
I saw somebody in the road. I mean, you saw they were protesting.
Yeah, I'm good friends with Trump.
And now they've been releasing verifications that police officers around the country have been known to have open affiliations with the KKK. Not that this is something new.
Right.
Not that hasn't been historically true, but the fact that there's a resurgence of this kind of white nationalism, the fact that white supremacist groups continue to be the largest terrorist group in the country.
There was a stat, and it's like domestic violence or terrorism, I don't know what the phrase is, but has since 9/11 has only been committed by American citizens. So like the largest acts of terrorism in this country have all been homegrown, essentially, and mostly committed by white males because they're the ones who obviously have access to all this shit. So they're the ones that need policing. That's all I can say.
Okay, I was going to say the thing about the Trump administration is interesting in regards to just policing, like you said, and whatever else is going on in terms of law enforcement is Jeff Sessions, who probably at this point, by the time the podcast comes out, will probably be our attorney general. And then the other one is James Comey of the FBI, who pulled back for a minute. These two people will be on Trump's administration. James Comey, who already has his questionable issues. During his administration, the FBI has, and it just came out in The Intercept probably yesterday. So if you guys read this, The Intercept, which is a great political magazine to read. But they just came out with a long article about the FBI's infiltration of the last 2 years in terms of white supremacists getting into police ranks. And it's a great read if you want to read it. It's
Wow.
but it's long. It's definitely a long read. But they go through and how the FBI has their own issues with just how to address and how to find and then how to discipline people who are in white supremacist organizations, and the sheer number of them who've been arising over the last 2 years in police organizations. And so I would say if you guys get a chance to read that, but also too, with Jeff Sessions being the attorney general, those things like those Ferguson protester bills, or even going into citizen review boards, or even having national like decorum on how to address political unrest, that falls under Jeff Sessions, how you prosecute people. And we know from his history, Alabama, not only is it not going to be prosecuted, but he's probably going to push laws that either are roll back those type of restrictions, or like completely what's going on in Missouri, in North Dakota, we're trying to keep protesters completely either in felony cases or to be like locked up for that. So that's going to be interesting too, as those rollbacks start to happen with Jeff Sessions and the FBI.
Well, you have like the kind of political people, and then you also have people like Rex Tillerson, who was also confirmed, and he's the like ex-CEO of Exxon. And if you watch his confirmation hearings, he essentially just doesn't answer any questions. Like, he was just like, oh, you need to ask Exxon, or like, so you supported this and you gave money for that. Well, you would have to ask someone else. And they're like, well, do you not know the answer? Like, it also just feels like, you know, Ken said this on the podcast a few weeks ago. It's hard to humiliate the shameless.
Right.
But it's also like really hard to get facts out of people who don't know anything. Like it's really hard to even get information out of like these people who are so removed from politics and are only involved on an economic standpoint.
Hashtag Secretary of Education.
I was about to say, you mean incompetent
You want to
people?
get into her? Because we can. Because I can tell you, Senator Warren, who some people are kind of on the fence about, but she lit her ass up.
I love her. She was like,
killing it.
have you ever attended a public school? All right. Have you ever pulled out a loan for school? Have your kids ever pulled out a loan for school?
Do you know what a loan is?
And she still got confirmed.
How have they still been confirmed?
So this is something that happened the other day. The Senate committee approved the Trump Treasury and health nominees without the Democrats present after the GOP changed the panel's rules. So I literally think they're just in there running amok. Like, they're just in there like, oh, we're going to do this while they're out to lunch. Like, we'll just confirm this person now. Like, oh, we'll have these hearings and we'll do this and we'll do that. Because nobody's like, they're all in charge.
Okay.
Who's watching them?
Right. But then the Democrats need to be more accountable to always have someone in the room.
So
don't leave the room. Somebody has to be there. Somebody has to take the bullet and be like, yo, y'all can't be that far. It's DC. Right. Like, run down here.
Yeah, someone tweeted and it was like the Democrats.org emailed them. It was like, show you're part of the movement against Trump. And somebody retweeted and was like, you first. I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah, you're asking me for money every day.
You're asking me for all of this, but y'all not really doing your job, though, fam.
You know what? But I thought it was cool, you know, and after the whole immigration push and everything that's been happening, that the ACLU was revitalized with such a tremendous amount of money. And so I think that the value coming out of an election year and knowing that a lot of people, you know, in the advertising space, in any kind of investment space, that those people are not using their money in any kind of in a free-flowing way, that people are really interested in coming out of pocket for causes that they believe in.
Right.
And I think that's evident in like this whole Uber Lyft sort of shift that's happened.
Yeah,
so
did y'all see that?
Yeah, so like, what was it? It was only 2 days ago when the CEO of Uber was like on the advisory committee for economics or something, and within 12 hours, Lyft had more downloads than Uber ever, and the prices for Lyft had skyrocketed, and Uber was like $5 for every ride. You could take a regular black car Uber for like $5 from here to Brooklyn.
I still deleted it.
As you should.
I deleted it as well. And I didn't know it was everywhere. I thought it was just to JFK where they were protesting.
Oh, no.
So
like,
that was, and you know, I love me some goddamn Uber.
I still have, I can't lie to y'all. I still have the app because I in a pinch, like.
Hashtag do better. So I agree. I get it. If
Hashtag black business.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the same thing.
Oh, yeah. What is it called?
Movin'. MOOVN.
I saw that. I downloaded Juno and Via today.
Via.
Here's the thing. I have the
New
same,
York.
I have the same struggle with like Chick-fil-A. I don't eat at Chick-fil-A all the time, but when I eat it, it tastes good.
Have y'all seen
It's
that
like,
meme? There's a meme of someone saying like, "Oh, Chick-fil-A has all these repressive policies," and it's a picture of a kid like leaning over their school
Yes.
desk, secretly taking a bite of a sandwich.
I don't know. It's hard.
Shout out to my family Instagram group chat. I'll show y'all.
Okay.
The ultimate memes.
Sorry.
Oh, I love this.
So you should delete it, and I'm going to. I just haven't parted ways. I haven't used it, but I just like haven't parted ways.
Can we talk about so Dee had a little housewarming last week, and we had an opportunity to meet a
Which
friend.
two of the people in this room flaked on last minute day of.
All right,
Shout out.
We'll get into that later. So, the purpose of me bringing that up is that we happen
Was
to
it
meet
to shade them? Because that's what I want to do.
We happened to meet
no.
a friend of our good friend of the podcast, Najee Omar, who was an artist, and he's been featured before. But he brought his friend Utak, who was delivering the one-liners. I mean, just delivering them. So one of the jokes was this culture of snitching. And what I mean is, if you grow up in a place where, I mean, I'm gonna be like the CEO from Uber. Like, why wouldn't I name drop all these other people who are also on Trump's advisory,
Right.
council? Why would you go out of your way to be like, yes, I'm sorry, I am on the advisory council, but guess who else is? Disney. Who else was on that
Named
list?
him, it's just like it costs you nothing to be quiet. That's the thing that I didn't understand about it.
He said, if I'm going down, all your businesses are going down too.
So with that, all the spikes happen. Lyft, Move In. Like now, there's literally 3 other ride-sharing apps that I heard of in the past 24 hours, specifically because of this. And I think today the CEO removed himself from the advisory board.
council.
He was told to. They were like, nigga,
Well-
you got to get up off of here. You messing up business. You messing up economics.
But also to Kiara's point, so Lyft, is it Lyft? They're
Yeah,
like
Lyft.
donating
250,000 a year.
Yeah,
For the
so
next-
like it's like going up to I think 1.5 million. So once
Oh,
they
it's
hit,
1.5. I thought it was just a million. But yeah.
no, I think it's 200,000 a year up until they get to 1.5 million. But whatever it is, like, or maybe it's the ACLU has just raised so much money in the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 days because people are just like, this is going to be the Great White Hope. ACLU come through with the policy.
It's like 10 million more than they do usually annually.
Yeah,
Right.
Like it's like that substantial for a nonprofit, especially like ACLU, really shows the dedication of the movement. And I'm going to take it back and reverse the clocks for a quick second here, because my grandfather, being a civil rights activist, he came to the city of Newark in 1968, 1969, middle of the riots. Things were, when I see what he went through and the stories that he tells me, I think about the parallels to what we are in present day, right? So had the Festival of Love, the Women's March, right? You referenced that, right? Where he was able to bring together a bunch of people without the police involved because the police weren't going to come out and have any kind of happy festival, love festival with a bunch of people, black people in Newark, right? So, and who were able to change the dialogue and change the conversation. Well, we're positioned, unfortunately, yet fortunately, in the same position. And I use my siblings as an example. 8 to 10 years my junior. They don't know anyone but Obama. That's the hope. They're fed up. They weren't down for Hillary. Some of them didn't get out and vote. Well, now you're really fucking pissed off. I got to go to work every day. Go ahead, march.
Hey.
Go ahead, call everyone we need to call. And make sure you vote. Not every 4 years. Every
For
2.
your local,
it makes a
local
difference.
offices.
Yep.
I'm actually like low key thinking about running for our school board in my area, but that's a whole other situation that I
D, I said you're going to be in some
gonna
type of
do it.
political. Yeah. I was like, you going to be the mayor of, what city you from in New Jersey?
where I live at now.
I don't know, girl.
I live
She's
in
gonna be
Jersey
on the
City.
council.
So,
that's all we
youngest-
gotta know.
Exactly.
Yep. Youngest New Jersey mayor. I graduated high school with him.
Oh yeah.
South Orange, Village of South Orange.
Oh bet.
So, got your political
Plug.
political-
You got a
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah.
I have seriously been thinking about it, but I just have to like get a few things off my plate first.
You're such a doer, and you're so to the point. The type A-ness in you is such a. I mean, you meant for politics.
Am I?
'Cause I could just
also
see you-
can't play the game. Like, I
But
feel
your
like
face would tell it all. If somebody
Me
said
and-
something
have
stupid
you
on that floor, you would just give the look of death.
it reminds me of Maxine Waters. Have y'all seen the memes? Man, she is so black every day. She's looking at them. Okay. King Williams, what you got? Anything?
Well, thank you for asking me. But,
I was like, damn, he hasn't said anything in a while. Let me shoot him the alley. What's up?
well, no, I like listening to you. It's really good perspectives. But the main thing, I think we're at the point now where you said back to Uber, right? So Uber and Facebook got a shit stormed like they should have for all the fake news that they allowed to happen. But
Right.
Fake news.
is 2017 the year that people kind of fall out of love with social media and like technology?
Ooh, that's an awesome question.
Nah, because you got a generation who grew up who only knows that, though.
I think it's a combination of things, though. I mean, you're talking about something like the fact that this march was started on Facebook. So,
I think it might promote more social entrepreneurship, and you'll see a broader variety of apps and organizations popping up in that sphere. But I don't think it's going to be people. I think it's going to drive more people to media, but independent media. I think
Word.
you're going to see a boost in that.
You
for
know
sure.
what I've been on lately, and I want to get back to like what you're just talking about, but Vice.
Oh, yeah.
you keep bringing up Vice, and I just haven't watched it.
Viceland.
Yes, I
Vice
fucking
is
love
amazing.
Viceland. It's amazing because, I mean, they literally have stories like every day on like, you know, the North Dakota pipeline. They have stories on like immigrant. Yo, I heard like
Are you talking about Viceland or are you talking about Vice News Tonight on HBO?
Viceland has these stories, but Vice News Tonight also has like snippets of that each night. So
Just for the people.
yeah, where to find it if you're a Time Warner customer? It's channel 133. So like it's informative because I feel like it's news, but it's objective, right? I don't feel like, what did Trump say? He said CNN. I don't watch that channel anyway because you know they have fake news, and I can't respect that.
We're gonna
or
follow
Fox
up on
News.
that.
I like those guys. You know what I'm saying? It's just like I don't want to actually. I have issues with CNN and Don Lemon sometimes. Then I also, you know, Fox News is just a form of oppression in my opinion. One source that I feel like if you're on TV and I want to like turn on something other than like looking or seeking things myself, Viceland has been such a nice resource to give perspectives of your marginalized groups. But it just reminded me in going into immigration and we were kind of talking about with Uber and like the protests and things like that. This is something that unless you kind of like are closely to someone who is an immigrant or second generation, but not only if you leave the country, they're also cracking down on deportation. So this is an instance that just literally happened 2 days ago. A co-worker's mom has lived in the States. She's from Cuba, lived in the States for the last 20 years, had all her kids here, husband's here, has one daughter who lives in Paris, went to go visit the daughter and her new granddaughter in Paris, got detained and is being deported back to Cuba.
Yeah.
Where she has no
Nothing.
family and no like has been removed for years, and I've had family members who've been deported too. So it's one of those things that I was just like, what? Like, it's in the realm of like the foolishness that's going on, but it's on the like periphery of like the main like of course there's these 7 countries where people cannot come back to the States from, but also it's like there's other issues with immigration that just are arbitrary and foolish too. But anyway.
And it affects education. Because that's the thing. I have a friend who works at Northwestern, and she was saying that the Northwestern, I guess, faculty, the president and them were just like, we're not going to release any of our students' background information because it's private information, and they have a lot of students from out of the country. And I thought that was really interesting because I hadn't even thought about that. Like the universities, I guess, could be subpoenaed for this information if they wanted to be. You know, I don't know what the rules are here, but there's tons and tons of students who could be impacted by this very severely. There are people we work with who are consultants who I worked with somebody who went to drop off his visa papers last week. And I was like, oh shit, are those going to get approved? Are you going to be able to stay here as a wife, newborn kid? I'm like, what are the implications of all of this in every realm that we're talking about? Not just breaking up families. We're talking about corporations losing people who are working these jobs. You're losing qualified people. You're losing students. You're losing the innovators, essentially, of like the new generation. So
I mean, permanent green card holders, you know, like my best friend's mom. We were sitting there having dinner. I was like, you know, hey, your mom still is not an American citizen. You're finally an American citizen because at 18, I was like, girlfriend, you got to do this. But her mom isn't. And we were talking, maybe we don't know. And her boyfriend's family, Haiti, Guyana.
Right.
What are you going to do?
yeah.
It's you can't even travel. Like honestly, like even just to take a quick trip.
Yeah,
it's dangerous to even do that. Yeah, my parents were permanent green card holders up until 2009.
Oh, recently.
Yeah, and they had been here since 76.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point they got a house, they got jobs, like it wasn't an
Yeah.
issue, but like they wanted to become citizens, they wanted to vote and all that other jazz. There's so many people who have been here for generations that it just I don't know.
So
It's just ridiculous.
Before they became citizens, they couldn't vote, right?
Nope, can't
So
vote.
there's tons
You can't even pull out a student loan either. There's a lot of little like tricky language when it comes to like being
I
an
have a real
immigrant.
issue with voting in this country, but that's just a whole other topic. I don't know if y'all want to get into.
Yeah, I think that's a whole other
a
entire
whole
show.
There are a lot of Silicon Valley companies I saw that are now talking about exporting a lot of their workers to places like Canada,
Shit.
so that they have a sanctuary. But also, you've seen around the country a lot of sanctuary cities like New York City, and pretty much any major
Maplewood,
city.
New Jersey, the first New Jersey township to say that we're going to give sanctuary to any immigrants, which really made me proud for my hometown.
That's love.
Shout out to that.
Yeah,
Even-
it was pretty cool.
A lot of bad things to say about Pennsylvania, but
Yeah.
even Lancaster in Pennsylvania, they actually have been. I think they're one of the largest sanctuary towns in the country.
Wow.
And they've been giving refuge to Somalian immigrants and a couple of other different groups. So there are a lot of people who have been doubling it down against their resistance against the administration and saying that they're not going to support things. That's why we saw the current attorney general get booted out.
That
You know?
Just the,
That was
I can't even get into this.
that was amazing.
a qualified woman.
Amazing is the word. It was literally amazing. I was just like,
It's tyranny.
huh?
It really
You
is.
don't agree with an idiot, with an incompetent POTUS, and he's like, "No, you're fired." What?
And she found out minutes before. She found out minutes before she was about to get fired, before they made the announcement that she was being released.
Try to embarrass her. I ain't here
You
for
know?
this.
There's no respect.
Here's the thing, though. Like, Trump is going to keep him. You know, it's not even Donald Trump. Let's go back. It's every person he's already hired and every person in Congress who's going to keep doing this for the next at least 2 years. So
Right.
Ugh.
the thing is, what is going to be our plan as people? Because we obviously can't fight every fire that comes out there. So I've seen this kind of prop up. Is this going to be like the 1960s again, where you have so many splinter groups going after different things just because there's so many things to address at the same time?
Right.
So that goes to
Like-
I think the question is what states can we leverage, right? It's almost like you have to think about it as a presidential election, and what states can we leverage where Senate, the Senate races where you can turn from Republican to Democrat, and then how do we strategically, donate money to funds to help to fund campaigns in those specific areas, right? So in the way that we've seen the movement to call your senators to have a conversation about not signing off on some of the cabinet choices, we have to think about how do we mobilize that.
So I want to get back to this, but I did want to bring up something before we get there. People everywhere have been protesting, and you're talking about college campuses. Literally the other day in Jersey City, there was a protest. I didn't even know that it was happening. Like, someone texted me a picture like, "Oh, are you here?" I was like, "No," but how was I supposed to know? Somebody I'm here, let's protest now. And so something like Trump threatening to take away federal funding from UC Berkeley because they were protesting this white supremacist, to me, is just such an extreme thing. And so I'm on the board of an organization called Social Justice Matters, and we are talking about actions because people are asking, like, what are we supposed to be doing? So I made up a list today, naturally, of things that I think we could all be doing. So I've said this before. There's an actions at 2hoursaweek.org.
Yes.
Which you can email them and you can get on their email list, and they'll essentially tell you what you can do that will only take you 2 hours in a week.
I'm gonna actually do that. You
Calling
mentioned
your
it
senators.
before.
So here's the thing. I actually have a coworker who is born in Germany. She's just like really pissed about everything. She's trying to get her citizenship, all this stuff. And she said that she was going to put a daily 15-minute calendar invite on our calendars so that at the beginning of the day we just called senators and like just called people, because it is that important that we need to take time during the day, and if that's what we need to do, that's just what we need to do.
The Women's March also has a platform.
It's on my list. You can go ahead.
No, go ahead. That's you. That's you. That's
No,
you.
so also the Women's March, like Codey said, so the website used to be about like the actual events and where the protests were and all that stuff. Now it's literally an action website, so you can click there's a new action every 10 days for the first 100 days. And so you can click on what the current action is, and it gives you a step-by-step of things that you can do and ways in which you can fulfill the actual action they're talking about. And then there's articles. I read 3 articles today. Rolling Stone and Information Press have really good ones about 7 ways to just take political action. They tell you what organizations have publicly supported Trump, what organizations you should be boycotting, what organizations you can join, what organizations you can donate to. So essentially all you need to do is Google like how to stay sane and take action or 7 ways to take political action. You'll find both of those articles. And then the other thing is the indivisibleguide.com. And it's groups taking individual action. Basically, they're wholly independent and they're listed based on your area. And they've all just kind of agreed to resist Trump's agenda and focus on local and sort of congressional advocacy. So you can visit that website and that will tell you at least what's going on in your area and like local grassroots organizations that you can support or join or whatever. So there are ways. You just kind of have to find them, and we need to be constructively giving them out. I think there's so many things available to us online. It's just like, which one should I really be doing? Like I called Paul Ryan's office the other day. Thankfully,
Girl, tell us more.
you could call. It was about Obamacare. So it was like, Obamacare is terrible and we're going to change it and make it better for everyone. And if you support Obamacare, click 2. Or if you don't support Obamacare, click 1. If you do, click 2 or something like that. So you have to listen to like up to 2 minutes of silence. Then it's like tells you the whole spiel about what the Republicans are trying to do. And then you just vote for what you want or don't want to do. And then that's it. And then like at the end, you have an option to leave a voicemail. So some people I know left like scathing voicemails for him just because just because they heard his voice. But it took me 2 seconds. I did it when I got to work. I was like on my phone just getting water, and in the 2 minutes that it took me to walk down the hall, get water, and come back, I was done. So it's actually super easy to do some of these things, and hopefully we'll see an actual outcome from them. But we just have to sort of disseminate the information appropriately.
I think Republicans, going against their party's candidate for cabinet, I think that's a big step.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that if you can hear the voice of the people and that you have people who are starting to blur the party lines, I think that's the first step to a revolution. When people are starting to stand up and say, hey, like, okay, I'm like a diehard Republican, but I really can't vote for this person, or I really can't get behind this cause, that's going to start a revolution.
Yeah.
And I think that picking up the phone and making a phone call is super important. I don't know what will move the needle in an impactful way when it comes to the next election. And that's what I'm fearful
Midterms, for sure.
But my fear is that these sort of things, I think that they have a lot of efficacy. I think that they're powerful. But I think that they might not be felt to their full effect until people feel like they might be on the chopping block until about a year from now.
Yeah.
When they actually have to think about the next election cycle.
Right.
That is where we need to educate, because that's where people don't know that that's the value. And I'm hoping through like the media, the fake news and everything, and talking about how there hasn't been, cabinet nominations. And I did my recon research and in the past 3 decades, there has been adversity to cabinet nominations. There's never been like a full force, like everyone is locked in. But Bill Clinton, most of the people were locked in. President Obama, a good portion of his people were locked in by this point. We have a lot of, I don't have specific numbers in front of me, but we're seeing a lot of like counterproductive behavior. And I think that conversation starts to raise red flags when people are thinking about, okay, so what does my day-to-day look like if people that I voted for and that I put in place are now not down for the man that I also voted for? Like, you look in the mirror one day and you say, wait a second, how does this impact me? Mm-hmm. And I think that along with, I was in an Uber before the delete Uber. And actually, I correct myself. I was in a Juno, and it was a woman with a hijab on. And she was driving, and I said, I always start conversations with people, and I said, you're comfortable driving a car in this state of the world as a woman? And she's like, I do, and you'll be surprised about what people say to me. They're like, she said a young woman came in the car. She's probably about 25 years old, and she said, my mom hates Muslims. And she's like, but you're a very, very nice woman, so I don't understand why my mom hates Muslims.
She was white?
White.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure.
So I say that, and I put that on the table to say, if you have that race relations happening in real time and you're having people interact with people, going back to what I said earlier, Trump in places that he doesn't know, then how do we move forward and how do we create those opportunities as teaching moments to change the game of what we do and how we mobilize as a community and get people out to vote?
We just can't be passive anymore. She's got to respond to that to say, well, all Muslims aren't the same, and I'm this, and this is what you should know.
And that's what she did.
Like today, I mean, today, fucking Trump gets up there and is like referencing Frederick Douglass as if he's still alive. So I mean,
in addition to Harriet,
and there's a moment that like somebody has to say to him, but you know he was right, and he's been dead for 100 years, right? Like you know that, right?
Frederick Douglass is an example of someone who's done an amazing job and is being recognized more and more. I noticed Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, and millions more Black Americans who made America what it is today. Big impact.
I could see him do big impact.
Exclamation point.
Yeah. My favorite was the quote about Martin Luther King,
where he referenced him 3 different times as Martin Luther King Jr., Martin Luther King, Reverend King.
Yes.
Oh,
really?
Okay, here we go. Last month, we celebrated the life of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., whose incredible example is unique in American history. You read all about Dr. Martin Luther King a week ago, and somebody said, I took the statue out of my office. And it turned out that was fake news.
That was fake news. Was it CNN?
The statue is cherished, and it's one of the favorite things, and we have some good ones. We have Lincoln, and we have Jefferson, and we have Dr. Martin Luther King, and we have other. But they say the statue, the bust of Dr. Martin Luther King, was taken out of the office and it was never even touched. So I think it was a disgrace, but that's the way the press is. It's very unfortunate. I'm like, how did you manage to make that not about him? Like, I didn't even understand the point of any of that whole part of the transcript.
There's 2 things that I think that are important in this moment. It's one, to historicize. We actually need to look at history and know the reality of history.
Facts.
And 2, it's to tell the stories of our difference. Because when you have people like this who are telling these broad brush stories about entire groups of people,
right?
Like entire groups of people, it's experience, it's firsthand experience that oftentimes destigmatizes bigotry and hatred. It's people's encounter with, oh, my mother hates Muslims, but you're nice, you're normal, you're an everyday person. So you're completely deflating someone's completely false notion of what it means to be a certain type of person or to look a certain type of way in the world.
Right.
And I think that there's more of a need now than ever to be able to have spaces to tell those stories.
Right. This reminds me of basically Zootopia. If anyone has...
I just watched that movie for like the 15th time, the morning after the housewarming.
And if you aren't familiar with Zootopia, it's basically is what America is. It's basically a big analogy on like differences within people who don't look like you, who don't act like you, aren't raised in the same environment.
The movie is an adult movie, first of all.
Yeah, no, it's very adult. But you know what this drew me to? When you said that, like, we do need to start, having these conversations to help people understand it. And it just made me think to myself, like, God damn, I'm tired of talking to my oppressor.
I think the point is that we need to also begin to talk to not just ourselves.
Talk about it.
And so C and I we've like touched on this, but not enough in that we talk to our friends. We haven't brought in anybody who doesn't agree with us.
Or who doesn't look like us.
Or who doesn't look like us. And we're going to work on that.
But it's scary. I'll be honest. Like the woman who I turned around to, she was like, what's wrong? And this was the inauguration day. And I said, I don't know what your political views are, but I'm very, I'm upset by this movement behind Trump. The woman hasn't spoken to me since in the office.
Oh, does that work?
Yeah.
Baby.
Yo, that's real. And that's why they say you shouldn't talk about religion and politics at the office. But at the same time, it's like inevitable.
But you asked me a question.
Right.
You asked me a question, and then we're past the point where it's like, I feel like politics and work used to be church and state, and it's not anymore. Nope. This is an everyday.
It's palpable. It's everywhere.
So
it's all around us.
Yeah, you can't just say like, oh, we can just avoid this topic because there's something happening every day that's going to affect us long term.
It's on Twitter.
That also wasn't
it's on
safer.
Everywhere.
Like, it's not safer for you to just be a closeted bigot.
Right.
You still a bigot. Like, your voting record shows that.
Right.
We just saw that.
Hashtag I'll never forgive white women.
No, I was going to say, even with the bigotry thing. So when I was working on my documentary, there was a professor out of Princeton, and his name was Kevin Cruz. He's pretty active on Twitter. But one of the things he talked about in his book, and even when I interviewed him, was like he framed the perspective of, he does a lot of things on whiteness and like the perspective of whiteness, right? So understanding white people and understanding culture of like America. So one of his books was called White Flight, and it's about how Atlanta becomes like the modern day birthplace of like the modern GOP, right? And so one of the things he points out in his book is that he talks about how every black gain, and this is the case of like the 100 years between slavery and the Voting Rights Act. So 100 years, so every black gain is perceived as a white loss. And so when you put that in perspective of everything from the Voting Rights Act to the housing, fair housing, the end of redlining, so many black gains that really aren't gains, but just are basic civil rights.
Human rights.
Right. And so how that mentality has never really changed from the party, especially when they split in the 60s around the time of Kennedy. And so you got to understand, so there's 100 years of that, and then there's another 40 or so years of just real any type of gain by anything. So when you have gay rights, George Bush won his second election solely on the fact that he got evangelicals to get behind him to stop gay marriage, right? And so every political gain that, like this author, again, his name is Kevin Cruz, he talks about it, just every political gain that they get is always at a affront to whiteness being lost. So I don't think, and that helped frame it how Trump's thing and how Trump supporters kind of view America, like even to make America great again. It's their America that was lost, right? So the moment, Barack Obama became president, we saw the number of arms sales go up in a way that we never seen, the number of militias, the number of KKK groups, the number of non-black things on social media. You can literally track that rise in real time. The other thing people don't talk about too is that in the last 3 years or so with Trump, not just Trump, right? So we have Fox News, we have the Tea Party, we have all these other things. These are all just an affront to what is the white nomenclature, what white society should be. And so we are surprised at Trump, but we should have been triggered by Brexit that happened before that, right? But nobody was seeing the red flags then. It's like the canary in the coal mine. Now we're seeing other European countries now, like Poland's having issues with that. Turkey's having not necessarily issues with race necessarily, but like this kind of nationalism that's kind of coming through Europe now. Angela Merkel in Germany's now having to, which has a huge immigrant population. Same thing with France. This didn't start at the same time, but if we're noticing it now, it's been going through Europe, it's going through America, and like unless people stop it, like it's going to get progressively worse real quick.
South America too.
I think you bring up a really good point that we need to start really paying attention. So if you listened to our episode last week, Noel Braham, who was in New Edition, he talked about planting seeds. And like these seeds were planted for this to happen long, long ago. And we only see it when the plant pops out of the root. But we really have to start paying attention to when these things start to spread on like a very kind of quiet, subtle level, but they're making waves everywhere. So this was an awesome discussion, but also we have some ways in which we can at least start paying more attention, things we can start to do and ways to sort of combat this, I guess.
Also, Beyonce's giving birth to the revolution.
Also, Beyonce is having twin babies, and she did a full photo shoot underwater. So if you need some brightness in your life,
gotta claim that one for the culture.
Just hit the Baylight Instagram. Hit the Baylight Instagram account because the full shoot is there.
Yeah. Oh, it's the most liked photo in the history of Instagram.
It is. It's the most liked.
What is it? How many likes is it now?
Million. Over 7 million.
7 million.
Yeah. No, it's like 8 last time I checked.
Really?
So I'm sorry, I'm dated. Last night it was over 7 million.
Last night, when I looked yesterday, it was like only 4 million. So, and I say only lightly.
I just want to mention on Lifetime, it's 8.894.
Wow.
8 million.
Yeah, I'm gonna round it up. It's 9 million.
It is 9 million. It'll be 9 million. With 400,000 plus likes. Anyway, or comments. Anyway, so.
New political goals get Beyonce to endorse
Exactly.
Right. She endorsed Hillary last
going.
minute. Still
she did. So.
She didn't embrace it full force, though.
And Hillary didn't do her job. But let's not get into it. So, this was our first Black History installment. Be on the lookout for
an
our
episode every
weekly
week.
Blackness. I guess we're this black every month, though, aren't we?
Our name is Black Meets World.
Oh, right. We're Black 365. Okay, so
Hey, Tom Joyner.
we're Black Meets World. You can find us on Twitter at Black Meets World. You can find us on Instagram, Black_Meets_World, or you can find us on Facebook at Black Meets World.
Thank you guys for joining us. Kiara, if people want to find you.
At Kiara Mo. LinkedIn, Chiara, Chiara Morrison.
Y'all need to find her because she's dope.
Yes, yes.
King Williams, what about you?
I am actually on a social media sabbatical, but you can follow my documentary, which is called The Atlanta Way, and it's on social media. So The Atlanta Way on everything else.
Word.
Oh,
Young Codey.
You can follow me on Facebook at Codey Young. It's Codey, and you can follow me on Instagram. It's Codey_James6.
Nice. All right, y'all. Thanks for listening. Tune in next time.
Holler.